I'm Darren McGrady, the Royal Chef, former chef to the Queen, Princess Diana, Prince William, and Prince Harry.
He served Queen Elizabeth. He knew Princess Diana intimately, her likes, dislikes, and her heartbreaks. He even turned down an offer to cook for Prince Charles. And now, at 63, the former royal chef, Darren McGrady, has decided he's held his silence long enough. For over a decade, he witnessed royal drama behind gilded doors, including the rising influence of Camilla Parker Bowles. But while the world focused on scandalous headlines and tabloid wars, McGrady saw what few others did, what was said at the royal table, how Diana coped behind closed doors, and what Camilla was really like when the press wasn't looking. Now, after years of discretion, he's speaking out, not with accusations, but with chilling insight, subtle revelations, and behind-the-scenes truths that might just change how the world views Camilla and the monarchy itself. Was Camilla truly the villain in Diana's story? What did she say in private? And what was it like serving them both? The answers might shock you. Stick around. This isn't just royal gossip. This is history, served on a silver platter. Darren McGrady wasn't just another palace employee, he was embedded in the very rhythm of royal life. A trusted confidant in the kitchen, he didn't just prepare meals. He served up emotional stability in an environment full of protocol, secrecy, and escalating tensions. And when it came to Princess Diana, McGrady wasn't just her chef. He was one of the few people who witnessed her transformation from a radiant royal bride to a woman scorned, cornered, and eventually freed from the firm's grip. He often recounts how Diana would walk into the kitchen barefoot, laughing, asking for comfort food, perhaps beans on toast or her favorite bread and butter pudding. These weren't just snacks. They were emotional lifelines in a palace where warmth was in short supply. While the public saw Diana through tabloid flashes and formal events, McGrady saw the late-night chats, the tears, and the silent strength she wore like armor. Now fast forward to the early 90s, when the mood inside Kensington Palace started to shift. Camilla Parker Bowles, then publicly sidelined, but very much a private force, began re-emerging in Charles's life in a more visible way. Though she didn't walk the palace halls or dine in the chef's quarters, her shadow loomed large over every conversation. McGrady doesn't mince words when describing how things started to unravel. He recalls the change in Diana's spirit, her increasing need for comfort, and how the very air in the palace turned heavy. Staff who had always whispered about duty and protocol began murmuring about betrayal and heartbreak. Diana was no longer shielded from the palace machine. She was fighting against it, often alone. The chef has spoken about how Diana would often express a desire to break from the royal mold. He says she wanted to give her boys a normal life, to eat in the kitchen rather than the grand dining room. But beneath those domestic dreams was an undercurrent of heartbreak. Diana, McGrady believes, was emotionally gutted by the looming presence of Camilla. He's been careful not to say too much, but his silence, his pauses during interviews, they speak louder than words. One particularly chilling anecdote he's shared is how Diana once returned from a royal engagement, visibly shaken. Though she put on a smiling front in public, she came back to Kensington Palace quiet and reserved, asking only for a bowl of tomato consommé and to be left alone. McGrady recalls the way she stirred her spoon absently, barely eating. He didn't need to ask what happened. He knew. What's so striking about McGrady's perspective is how it cuts through the formalities. He saw Diana not as a princess, but as a woman struggling with a collapsing marriage, public scrutiny, and the subtle warfare playing out within the palace walls. Camilla, whether she ever stepped foot in that kitchen or not, had become the unspoken antagonist in this emotional drama. And then there's the moment that says everything, when McGrady turned down the chance to follow Prince Charles to St. James's Palace after Diana's death. That wasn't just a career choice, that was a declaration. He chose loyalty to the woman he saw suffer, rather than serve the man who, in McGrady's eyes, let her suffer. Today, McGrady remains a staunch defender of Diana's memory. Through cookbooks, interviews, and even social media posts, he subtly but firmly reminds the world who the real people were behind the royal titles. And while he never worked directly for Camilla, his reflections make it painfully clear. The emotional landscape of the palace shifted dramatically when Camilla became more than just a background name. For those paying attention, McGrady's restrained commentary is less about gossip and more about preserving the legacy of the one royal who dared to be human in a place where humanity was often silenced. The kitchen at Kensington Palace may have looked like any other stately culinary space, but to Princess Diana, it was a place of refuge. While the rest of the palace demanded formalities, scripted interactions, and a mask of grace, the kitchen was where Diana could exhale. Darren McGrady, the royal chef with a front-row seat to the drama unfolding behind palace doors, has painted a vivid picture of what really went on behind the royal curtains, and it's nothing short of captivating. McGrady often described Diana casually wandering into the kitchen, sometimes barefoot, not for a meal, but for company. It was in these quiet, off-the-record moments that Diana would let her guard down. She wasn't the Princess of Wales in those conversations. She was just a woman grappling with betrayal, loneliness, and the overwhelming pressure of being the world's most scrutinized figure. The stovetop warmth became the backdrop to what can only be described as Diana's private confessional. In one of McGrady's most revealing reflections, he recalled how Diana would vent about the hypocrisy and gaslighting she felt within the royal family. The public perception was being carefully sculpted by courtiers and media briefings. Diana, the unstable one, the dramatic, emotional royal, was losing the PR war, while Camilla, the long-whispered about other woman, was being slowly ushered into respectability behind palace walls. Diana knew it, and she talked about it. She hated the double standard, McGrady once shared. Diana wasn't just frustrated, she was heartbroken that the institution that demanded her silence and perfection was so quick to excuse and legitimize Camilla's relationship with Charles. Diana, deeply intuitive and painfully aware, would speak about how her voice was constantly drowned out by the machinery of the monarchy. And yet, in true Diana fashion, there was humor too, even in the pain. McGrady remembered how she would occasionally throw jabs at Camilla's rumored food preferences. While Diana loved light, refined dishes, grilled fish, poached chicken, and the occasional indulgent dessert, Camilla, according to palace whispers, preferred heavier, traditional British fare. Stodgy was the word Diana used, with a smirk that masked the sting underneath. These comments were never overtly cruel, but they weren't just jokes either. They were coded expressions of Diana's feelings, a subtle way of maintaining some power in a world where she often felt powerless. And then there's the quiet brilliance of Darren McGrady himself, how he navigated these confessions with grace. He never speaks in tabloid terms. He doesn't throw anyone under the bus. But that's precisely what makes his silence on Camilla so deafening. When interviewers bring up Charles and Camilla, McGrady's tone shifts. He quickly pivots. He dives into warm, detailed stories about Diana, about her compassion, humor, and her ability to make even staff feel like family. He lights up when talking about William and Harry as little boys chasing each other around the palace or helping stir cake batter. But when it comes to Camilla, nothing. There are no cozy anecdotes about her favorite meals, no affectionate stories about her time at the palace, no humanizing memories, just silence. To royal watchers, that silence is the loudest statement McGrady has ever made. In the tightly controlled world of royal commentary, where every word is measured, omission is a powerful form of protest. And McGrady is too seasoned, too precise, for it to be accidental. His unspoken commentary has fueled speculation for years. Was he privy to tensions that went deeper than he's let on? Did he witness moments that would permanently alter his view of Camilla? The chef won't say, but his avoidance of the topic, his refusal to so much as hint at warmth, tells you everything you need to know. For someone who served the most influential figures in British history, McGrady's loyalty is clear. He's chosen to elevate Diana's memory, to shield her legacy from the whitewashing of history. And in doing so, he's told us more about Camilla than any scandalous headline ever could. For Princess Diana, the kitchen at Kensington Palace wasn't just a room with a stove. It was her escape hatch from the chaos of royal life. While the world saw her as a glamorous icon or a fragile tabloid figure, behind palace walls, she found solace in the unlikeliest of places, the warm hum of the royal kitchen, and in the company of her trusted chef, Darren McGrady. He wasn't just there to cook. He became her sounding board, her therapist, and at times, her only ally in a house filled with whispers and judgment. McGrady has shared over the years how Diana would regularly appear in the kitchen, not always to eat, but to talk. Sometimes she was laughing, sometimes she was exhausted, but often she was just trying to make sense of the emotional warfare she was living through. The conversations weren't rehearsed. They were raw. She opened up about her frustrations, her isolation, and the brutal double standards that left her feeling like the villain in a story she never wrote. One of Diana's most repeated laments, according to McGrady, was how she was painted as the unstable one, while Camilla was quietly and steadily being embraced by the very institution that once demanded Diana embody perfection. The gaslighting wasn't subtle. McGrady remembers her saying how the palace would dismiss her concerns as paranoia, all while back-channeling favorable PR for Camilla. That betrayal cut deep. And Diana didn't sugarcoat it when speaking to someone she trusted. But Diana's way of coping wasn't always solemn. She had a wicked sense of humor, and McGrady was often on the receiving end of her sharp, sarcastic jabs, especially when it came to Camilla. One of the more playful yet pointed areas of contrast she loved to bring up: food. McGrady recalls how Diana would jokingly refer to Camilla's supposed love of stodgy British food, meat-heavy, gravy-soaked, and dull, in comparison to Diana's preferences for light, elegant cuisine. It was a culinary clash that became symbolic of something deeper: Diana's belief that Camilla represented everything regressive, traditional, and closed off, while Diana saw herself as progressive, emotionally open, and modern. These jokes, though delivered with a smile, carried serious emotional weight. They were Diana's way of expressing how she processed betrayal through sarcasm, wit, and a sense of ironic detachment. She wasn't crying in every corner. Sometimes she fought back with a knowing smirk and a well-placed dig about a roast beef dinner. And while Diana was open, expressive, and at times brutally honest, Darren McGrady took a different approach. He has never sensationalized his time at the palace. He doesn't need to. It's what he doesn't say that's so compelling. When interviewers bring up Camilla, there's a noticeable shift. McGrady lights up when speaking about Diana. He can recount in vivid detail the times she brought William and Harry into the kitchen, or how she once sneaked a dessert before dinner because she deserved a treat. But when Camilla's name enters the conversation, it's like a switch flips. No stories, no fond recollections, not even neutral remarks. Just a careful, calculated silence. To royal watchers, that absence of commentary is anything but accidental. McGrady is a seasoned pro. He knows how to speak volumes without crossing lines. In the world of palace etiquette and unspoken rules, omission can often be more damning than accusation. By choosing not to share anything at all about Camilla, McGrady sends a message. He doesn't owe her a narrative. He doesn't grant her the same emotional real estate he freely gives to Diana. Body language experts have even analyzed McGrady's interviews, noting how his posture stiffens and his tone flattens when Camilla is brought up. He doesn't attack, but he doesn't validate either. It's a delicate dance of diplomacy and quiet dissent. In a royal ecosystem built on image control, where every statement is filtered through layers of press secretaries and palace protocol, Darren McGrady's restraint is powerful. He's not writing exposés or airing dirty laundry. He's doing something far more cutting, refusing to offer warmth where he doesn't believe it's deserved. And in doing so, he continues to honor Diana, not just with his words, but with the silences that speak louder than anything else. Darren McGrady wasn't just a chef in the royal kitchen. He became one of the most trusted figures in Princess Diana's life. And long after her death, that trust has shaped every public word he's spoken and not spoken. While most royal insiders faded into obscurity or rewrote their allegiances with time, McGrady made a very different choice. He chose Diana. Not just then, but always. He has gone on record calling Diana the most caring person he's ever known, describing how she treated everyone, staff included, with grace, humor, and humanity. This wasn't just royal lip service. McGrady has worked with breast cancer charities she supported, spoken at fundraisers in her honor, and made it his personal mission to preserve her legacy without distortion. His cookbook, Eating Royally, is more than just a collection of recipes. It's a tribute to the woman behind the headlines. Each story, each dish, is laced with reverence for Diana's warmth and resilience. But then came a shift that McGrady, like many close to Diana, found hard to digest: the public redemption of Camilla Parker Bowles. Over the years, Camilla's image was carefully scrubbed, polished, and repackaged for public consumption. She went from being one of the most vilified women in Britain to receiving the title of Queen Consort. A stunning PR turnaround. Yet, while royal commentators praised the modern fairy tale, McGrady kept his distance. His silence, once again, was deafening. In one interview, when asked what he thought about Camilla stepping into the role of queen, McGrady didn't launch into a tirade. He didn't refuse to answer. He simply said, "I think Princess Diana would have a lot to say about that." Just 10 words, but they hit harder than a scandalous tabloid. It was a mic drop moment that needed no follow-up. The implication was clear. To many, this wasn't just Camilla stepping into a new title. This was the erasure of a painful history that shouldn't be forgotten. For McGrady, it wasn't just about who sat on what throne. It was about truth, loyalty, and the sanctity of memory. Diana wasn't just someone he worked for. She was someone he believed in. Watching her adversary ascend to the role Diana was once destined for wasn't something he could simply applaud. Instead, he stepped aside, kept his dignity, and let the world read between the lines. And if there's any single moment that cements McGrady's loyalty, it's this: the day he turned down Prince Charles. Following Diana's tragic death in 1997, McGrady was offered a highly coveted position: personal chef to Prince Charles at St. James's Palace. This wasn't just a step up. It was a royal seal of approval, the kind of opportunity that could define a career. But McGrady said no. It was a quiet rebellion that shocked royal insiders. Why would anyone turn down such a prestigious post? The answer lies in the unshakable bond he had with Diana. Working for Charles, especially during the phase when Camilla was being slowly reintroduced into public life, would have felt like the ultimate betrayal. He had witnessed firsthand the pain Diana endured. He heard her confessions. He saw the toll the public humiliation took. to turn around and serve the very people she felt abandoned by? That was a line he simply couldn't cross. So instead of continuing his career in royal kitchens, McGrady made an unexpected move. He packed up, left the UK, and relocated to the United States. There, he built a new life for himself, one where he could continue honoring Diana without compromise. He didn't sell tell-all books. He didn't exploit her secrets. He cooked, he spoke, and he raised money for her causes. And in every appearance, every interview, every subtle gesture, he made one thing crystal clear. His loyalty was never for sale. Darren McGrady has never needed to scream his allegiance. His restraint speaks volumes. In a palace built on silence and spectacle, he chose substance. And in doing so, he ensured that Diana's legacy wasn't just preserved, it was protected. Darren McGrady now lives in Dallas, Texas, with his wife, Wendy, and 3 children, but his royal past still follows him. He's a celebrated chef, runs a catering business, appears on major news shows, and holds cooking classes. His cookbook, Eating Royally, is a love letter to his time in the palace, with a clear emphasis on the dishes Diana loved most. Still, the media continues to chase him for comment whenever Camilla is in the spotlight. And though he often declines every now and then, he lets something slip. A knowing smirk, a pointed pause, a suggestive shrug. He doesn't need to scream his opinion. His story has already been told, in flavors, in silences, and in who he chooses to remember. Camilla has undergone a stunning PR transformation. From the other woman to queen consort. Her journey is remarkable, but Darren McGrady's subtle pushback reminds us that not everyone in Diana's world is on board with this narrative. Public sentiment has softened toward Camilla, but McGrady's stories, however delicately told, keep Diana's truth alive. He hasn't accused Camilla of cruelty. He hasn't called her names. But his emphasis on Diana's suffering, his reluctance to celebrate Camilla, and his unwavering loyalty to the late princess paint a clear picture. It's a quiet form of resistance, and it matters more than any headline. So what did Darren McGrady really reveal? Technically, not much, but emotionally, spiritually, everything. He's kept the integrity of Diana's memory alive while refusing to aid in the whitewashing of royal history. His restraint, his subtext, and his quiet storytelling have added dimension to a tale often oversimplified by the tabloids. At 63, Darren McGrady has finally let the curtain drop. Just a little. Enough to see how the royals really operated, how much Diana struggled, and how Camilla's ascent still feels like a wound for those who knew Diana best. And perhaps that's the most honest thing anyone inside the palace has ever done. So, what do you think? Has Darren McGrady's subtle honesty exposed more about the royal family than any scandalous headline ever could? Has Camilla's reputation truly been rehabilitated? Or does the shadow of Diana still loom too large? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Do you side with Camilla? Or do you believe Darren's silence says everything? And if you found this royal deep dive compelling, make sure to like, share, and, of course, subscribe for more hidden truths from behind palace walls. There's always more than meets the eye in the House of Windsor. Stay tuned.